Eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. The state of the poverty rate in the Philippines is high. As of 2021, more than 23.7% of the population lives below the poverty line, and more than 4.5 million Filipinos in Manila are homeless and jobless. The hunger situation in the Philippines is also bad. In 2021, 2.9 million children, which is 13.1% of the population, were estimated to be hungry. In September 2020, a survey conducted by the social weather stations showed that 31% of Filipino families experienced hunger in the past 30 days, and 9% were suffering from severe hunger, which is the highest levels recorded in more than 20 years. One of the goals for the first MDG, according to magmonitor.org, the goal is to achieve full and productive employment as well as decent work for all, including young people and women. Has the Philippines eradicated extreme poverty and hunger? I do not think so. The state of the Philippines even before the pandemic showed a higher rate of poverty and a higher rate when the pandemic struck. Although the situation of unemployment rate is getting better with a decrease in unemployment from June 2021 to June 2022, there are still too many cases of poverty in the country for it to be considered eradicated. Achieve universal primary education. Under this MDG, the target is to ensure that children everywhere, boys and girls alike, will be able to complete a full course of primary schooling. Primary schooling consists of grades 1 to 6, the major subjects of which include math, science, English, Filipino, and social sciences. In 2021, there were over 27 million students enrolled, which is 8.83% higher than last year's, which is 1.1 million more children who will receive a primary education. In 2018, the Philippines had a primary completion rate of 115.4%. This actually decreased to 102.815% in 2020. However, this does not mean that it is bad because it is actually still over the target number of 100%. Is this a proper achievement for the Philippines? I would say that this is a massive improvement from the previous years. 12 years ago, the primary completion rate 12 years ago, the primary completion rate was under the target number, and not 10 years later, it went over the target percentage. MDG 3. Promote gender equality and empower women. The goal of the third MDG is to eliminate gender disparity in primary and secondary education, preferably by 2005 and to all levels of education. The indicators are a 1-to-1 ratio of girls and boys in primary education, primary participation rates, secondary education, secondary participation rates, and in tertiary education. There are also two more requirements: a target 50% share of seats held by women in national parliament and a target 50% share of women in wage employment in the non-agricultural sector. Actually, all but two of these have been achieved in 2014, which is 1 year before the MDG's target year of 2015. The indicators that have not been hit are the last two. The share of parliamentary seats held by women in the Philippines is only 28% as of 2021. And for the next one, it was a bit hard to find more recent information, but as for the share of women in the wage employment in the non-agricultural sector, in 2014 it was 41.1%, which was under the 50% target goal.
This has have been achieved in 2014, which is 1 year before MGD's target year of 2015. Indicators that have not been hit last two, and these are of parliamentary seats held by women in the Philippines is only 28% as of 2021, and it is a bit hard to find more recent information. But as for the share of women in wage employment in the agriculture sector in 2014, it was 41.1%, which was under the 50% target goal. For the MGDs 4, tackle reduce the child mortality. The target for MGDs4 is to reduce the mortality of rate of children under 5 years old and by two-thirds between 1990 and 2015. So related indicators are the infant mortality rate and proportion of children under 1 year of age immunized against measles. So the fall of many measures of children death, such as baby and under 5 mortality rates, indicates that the MGD4 goal to reduce the childhood mortality from its 1990 level is likely to be achieved according to the widespread consensus expressed by the Mdgs. However, a closer look at the data, particularly its breakdown by population groups and provinces, should warn the health sector against becoming complacent. So the gross difference in the rates of childhood population-based fatalities reveal that neonatal, so under 5 infant and post-neonatal mortality rates are inversely related to both income and education. Many of access to service can be used to explain these disparities. Over the past decades, the Philippines has made significant strides toward realizing child rights, especially since the ratification and commitment realizing the Convention of Rights of Children in 1990. So infant mortality was reduced from 41 to 21 per 1,000 live births, and under 5 child mortality from 59 to 27 between 1990 and 2015. So while this represents major progress, more intense work is needed to further reduce infant and child mortality targets of 15 and 22 respectively. The Filipino children are still facing multiple and deep-rooted deprivation and vulnerabilities that impede their survival, development, protection, and participation according to the situation analysis of launched today by the government of the Philippines and UNICEF. So the child mortality rate in the Philippines decreased since the Millennium Development Goals or the MGD target of reducing child mortality was proposed in 1990. Then the Philippines mortality rate dropped from 80 to 30 deaths out of 1,000 live births from 1990 to 2011. The infant mortality rates also decreased from 57 to 22. According to the Department of Health data, pneumonia, diarrhea, and congenital anomalies are leading causes of death among children below 5 years of age as of 2010. On the other hand, bacterial sepsis, pneumonia, and respiratory distress are top leading causes of infant mortality.
MDG 5. Improve maternal health. The targets for this MDG are reduce by 3/4 the maternal mortality ratio and achieve universal access to reproductive health. The indicators for reduced maternal mortality are a target maternal mortality ratio of 52 and a target proportion of 100% births attended by skilled health personnel. The indicators for if we have achieved universal access to reproductive health are a contraceptive prevalence rate of 100%, an adolescent birth rate of 0%, and ever-increasing antenatal care coverage. In 2017, the maternal mortality percentage was at 121%. In the same year, 84.4% of births were attended by skilled health staff, both under their target numbers. In 2019, the contraceptive prevalence rate was 40%, well under the target 100%, and also below the target at the time, which was 50%. The adolescent birth rate dropped in 2020 to 31%. The year before, it was at 41%, So while it is not at the target 0%, it is still an improvement. We have improved a lot since before 2014. At that point, the Philippine contraceptive prevalence rate and adolescent birth rate was just barely over 50%, and the improvement since then has gone up very fast. Has the Philippines achieved this MDG? The Philippines is improving, but I do not think it has achieved it. Infectious disease and illness in the Philippines. Admittedly, it's very hard to find information in the last few years about the state of how the Philippines has dealt with illness and disease, but here's what I could find. In the years from 2003 to 2020, the Philippines reduced malaria in the years from 2003 to 2020, the Philippines reduced malaria incidences by 87%. Not just that, there is also a 98% reduction in mortality from malaria, from 162 deaths in 2003 to 3 deaths in 2020. The the National Tuberculosis Control Program recorded a decline in TB cases between February 2020 and March 2020. It went from 30,728 to 24,782. That's almost 20% of a decrease. Though according to the same article, having fewer cases is not actually an indicator of success. The goal is to find and treat as many TB cases as possible. Has the Philippines achieved the sixth MDG? I believe that it is definitely on the correct path and it is going down that path as fast as it can, but it is very, very close to reaching it.
Ensure environmental stability. MDG 7 targets include integrating the principles of sustainable development into country policies and programs and reverse the loss of environmental resources. Half by 2015, the proportion without sustainable access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation, and by 2020, to have achieved a significant improvement in the lives of at least 100 million slum dwellers. The first has been integrated into Medium-Term Philippine Development Plan or MTPDP 2004 to 2010 with Philippine Agenda 21 as guiding document. However, Akala and Azanza and AST 2010 have reservations on the quality of available data. For the second, while the NSO data suggests that 3 to 4 of the population have access to safe drinking water and to sanitation facilities, the authors question the definition used and coverage of the data. The environmental problems that the Philippines has right now has a lot of government activities, issues, landslide, coastal erosion, biodiversity loss, extinction, global warming, and climate change.